In this way, our thinking can now behold the meaning of earth existence in the age of the consciousness soul. A macrocosmic rite, a second ethereal Eucharist, in which we give birth out of ourselves in the most intimate way possible, knowledge of the good, not as mere thought, but as life-filled moral will, breathed into greater power by the sacrifice of the true ethereal substance of Christ's being in the form of holy breath. The outer world is but a seeming, and what is brought by the culture of media mere pictures of the stage setting for the world temple that is home to our biographies. When we think away this outer seeming, this logos-formed and Maya-based sense world, and concentrate only on the idea of the moral grace, life-filled holy breath, we receive and then enact in the wind-warmed fire of individual moral will, as individual lawgivers, as the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. We create this meaning of earth existence. Every act of moral grace, given greater life within the deepest intimacy of our life of soul, is an ethereal communion with Christ, even though we may only experience it as what to us is a mere thought of what is the good at some moment of need in the biography. Christ gives us this gift by grace, freely out of love, and with no need that we see him as its author. We hunger inwardly to know what the right thing to do is, and when this hungering is authentic, we receive Christ's holy breath. This does not come so much as a thought picture of the good in response to our questing spirit, but rather as the contentless, breathing substance of Christ's being. We are touched, inspired by love, and at this touch we shape that breath into the thought that we then know. The nature of its application and the form in which we incarnate this thought are entirely our own. We shape the thought completely out of our own freedom, our own moral fire of will, for only we can apply it accurately in the individual circumstances of our lives. As the age of the consciousness soul unfolds, accompanied by the second Eucharist, the social world of human relationships begins to light and warm from within. For each free act of moral grace rests upon this gift of Christ's being to us, an ethereal substance received in the communion within the temple of the own soul, freely given in love whenever we genuinely ask, seek, and knock during our search for the good. Our participation in this rite, this trial by fire leavened by holy breath, leads us to the co-creation of new light and new warmth, the delicate budding and growing point of co-participated moral deeds out of which the new Jerusalem is slowly being born. This co-creation is entirely inward, a slowly dawning sun within the macro-invisible world of spirit. Moreover, we do it collectively as humanity. While each of us contributes our part, it is our collective conscious celebration of the second ethereal Eucharist, creating the good, that begins the transubstantiation of the collective and presently materialized and fallen thought world of humanity into the new Jerusalem. Thought is real, and is equally as real as matter. The original Eucharist transforms the already divinely given, now dying substance of earthly matter into life-filled spirit through our ritual invitation of the active grace of the divine mystery. And our participation in the second ethereal Eucharist transforms dead thought into living ethereal substance through the mystery of our individual spirit's active and embryonic grace that becomes united into the collective co-creation of humanity. In the invisible world of spirit we co-participate out of our own moral fire of will in the dawn of the new sun that is to become the new Jerusalem. Now that we know the true second coming, and of the meaning of the baptism by fire and holy breath, and the true meaning of the Antichrist spirit, we can turn our thinking more directly and concretely to our public life and its shared trials in the social realm of the social political existence of humanity, and the mystery there of render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. At the time that Christ taught, people were less intellectually sophisticated in some ways and naturally wiser in others. The human impulse that was to produce natural science had not yet been born. Yet it was also a time that stood at a very important crossroads. We were in danger, not so much from beings of evil as the end times folk obsess about, but from ourselves. We were ignorant and impulsive. The divine mystery knew what was to come as we began to shed this ignorance and started to master the world of the creation through such things as natural science. Yet we were also deeply loved, and above all this love valued our freedom. We don't raise children to be copies of ourselves, unless we are flawed and don't love them, but to be themselves. So, on the cusp of humanity's journey, from out of its spiritual childhood toward its spiritual adulthood, the God came to live like us, to die like us, and to give himself to us in the form of what teachings we might appreciate and find helpful as we grew and matured. Being God, the future, in a way, was an open book. And so we were given a lot which was to prepare us for what was to come. Our psychological nature and our moral nature and our flaws were obvious to divine insight. Deep guidance was offered, and it was left to us to do with this, out of our own freedom, whatever we would choose to do. It was assumed we would make errors of judgment. Hear and read once more the final words of the Sermon on the Mount. Therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, and the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fail, because it had its foundations on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Out of our freedom and maturation, among many things, we have produced various kinds of versions of social order, of what some call the state. This is what Christ referred to when he said, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar." He was not referring to a person, but to a common social necessity, for community life requires shared work and some degree of order. Here Christ is pointing out to us that what this shared order becomes depends on what we give to it, what we render to it. The state, our shared social order, is a human creation. Some will assert otherwise, and even insist it must be otherwise. If we listen carefully to these, however, we will hear that what they really assert is that the state be what they think it should be, and they claim in support of their view that this is what God wants. We are fools to believe them, for what human being can know the mind of God ever?